Case File 4 from World of the Incredible but True by Charles Bolitz. There have been numerous Bigfoot sightings in the United States and around the world. The human-like creatures are usually said to be large and hairy with glowing eyes. During the summer of 1988 that is, however, residents of Bishopville, South Carolina, reported accounts of a rare breed of Bigfoot, a 7-foot-tall lizard man with green scaly skin. According to witnesses, unlike other Bigfoot creatures, lizard man has only 3 toes on each foot, as well as long ape-like arms that end in 3 fingers tipped with 4-inch claws. Only the second Bigfoot to only have 3 fingers on each hand, and the first to also have 3 toes on each foot. Lizard man is the most unusual Bigfoot ever reported. 17-year-old Chris Davis first encountered lizard man around 2 a.m. on June 29th. On his way home, the teen stopped near the brackish water of Scape Ore Swamp outside Bishopville to change a flat tire. While replacing the jack in the car trunk, he glimpsed something running across the field towards him. Jumping into his 1976 Toyota Celica, he quickly engaged in a tug-of-war with the reptilian creature as he tried to pull the door closed. Then the lizard man jumped onto the car's roof, where he left scratches in the paint as evidence of his attack. Hysterically, Davis returned home and told only his parents and a few close friends about the experience. Law enforcement officers, however, interrogated him after neighbors said the boy might know something about the strange bite marks and scratches found on another car. Davis wasn't alone in his report. Soon other reports were flooding the sheriff's office. Teenagers, Rogers Wolf and Shane Stokes, for example, were driving near the swamp with their girlfriends when lizard man darted across the road in front of their car. Construction worker George Hollowman also claimed lizard man jumped at him as he was collecting water from an artesian well. Investigation in the area around the swamp, State Trooper Mike Hodge and Lee County Sheriff Deputy Wayne Atkinson found 3 crumpled 40-gallon cardboard drums. The tops of saplings were ripped off 8 feet above the ground, and there were, according to Hodge, humongous footprints, 14 by 7-inch imprints, impressions in the hard red clay. Following the tracks for 400 yards, the officers backtracked and found new prints impressed in their car's tire tracks. According to state wildlife biologists, the footprint matched no known animal species and remains an unsolved mystery. It might have been a lizard person. My family goes camping in Joshua Tree twice a year. This has been going on for at least 60 years. I'm 28, and in that whole time, my family has only ever left early on 2 occasions. The first was when it rained up in the mountains and caused 3 inches of flash flood to wash out our camp at 4 a.m. The second time was much more terrifying, and none of us have an answer as to what actually happened. It is the first night of camping, and 12-year-old me is in the girls' tent with all of my girls' cousins and about 6 of my male cousins are 10 feet away from us in another tent. My parents are closer to the road, Along the tree, sets of uncles and aunts. All in all, there are about 20 of us. Most of our tents are the kind that you can zip open at the top to see the stars, and I always love doing that because I'm a bad sleeper and it gives me something to look at when everyone else goes to sleep. At one point, I close my eyes and I start to fall asleep when a small pebble from the humongous boulder next to our tent falls on top of the tent. I'm used to this because birds and squirrels often knock small debris around when they try to get our food during the middle of the night. I open my eyes. The first thing I see is someone appears to be standing on top of the boulder, about 15 feet up in the air, looking down at our tents. The person seemed to be wearing tight clothing and was really skinny and oddly shaped. At first, I tell myself that it is one of my male cousins because they had been trying to scare us all night. But the poor person was moving really weird. Its head was moving back and forth like a cobra, and it kept crouching down on all fours and crawling down the face of the rock closer to us, then crawling back up and pacing. At one point, it looked up at someone making noise at another campsite, and its eyes gleamed in the moonlight. I'm also entirely sure that it did not have a skull shape of a coyote or a mountain lion. It had a flat face with no snout. So I'm laying in my tent, freaking out and trying to rationalize what I'm looking at. A lot of time goes by, and this thing just continues to watch us and move its body in a really strange way. I think about screaming, but the thing keeps coming down the side of the rock, and I'm afraid it will jump onto our tents and kill us. After some time, I hear her, "Hey, what the heck? Hey, what are you doing?" It's my uncle. Suddenly, at like 3 a.m., everyone is awake. My female cousins are awake and confused. Two of my older male cousins jump out of their tent with an axe. For a few seconds, the thing stays completely still. But then my aunt and several of my cousins see it, and they all scream. Everyone finds a flashlight, and they turn it on. But the thing jumps off the backside of the rock. A couple of seconds later, it runs or gallops out from behind the rock, past our campsite. My uncle manages to shine a light on it for a second, and I still don't have any idea about what I saw, besides the fact that the thing definitely didn't have clothes on, but it was naked and had a mark on its side that I mistook for spandex. We hear screaming and thrashing from another campsite, and several of the guys in our group go over to investigate. Whatever the thing was escaped into another campsite and ran into a small 2-person tent. When the rangers got there, it's 4 a.m. and everyone was confused. My uncle and the people at the other tent say that it was a naked person. I definitely don't think it's a person. And thankfully, 2 of my adult male cousins had also spent some time watching it and being absolutely terrified by it, so they agreed with me. We give them all the details we could, and one ranger tells us that it was probably a coyote or mountain lion with a mange. The other ranger looks really concerned, and I think he went off into the night to look for it. Either way, it was way too big for a coyote, and I've tracked mountain lions back in college and know for sure mountain lions do not move like that, nor look like that when they have a mange. We all left and went home that night. Either there was a naked crazy person, a monster, or a mountain lion with a mange running around. and it had spent at least an hour watching us. No thank you. We stayed in hotels for a couple of years after that. And I've camped there at least 20 more times since then. And I've never heard or seen anything like it since. Thank God. Weird experience in the woods. My family is very outdoorsy. And every year we go to what we call hunting camp. This involves my brother, dad, myself, and close family friends, usually about 15 guys. We've been going to the same woods that my father and his dad went to over 30 years ago, and even camp in the same spot in Michigan. This is a spot tucked deep into the woods and is by no means a sanctioned campground. This area we camp by almost borders right up to the Native American land given to the tribes by the state. Now, I've heard enough of these stories, and I'm generally pretty skeptical of the more far-fetched ones. But those who know the area can clarify this, and you can Google it. For our camp, we set up a huge old canvas army tent that sleeps about 15 guys in cots. My brother and I stopped sleeping in that tent and would set up our own individual tents because amongst the other guys there is one that is an unbelievably loud sleeper. Seriously, you wouldn't even believe me if I could mimic it for you. This particular night happened 4 or 5 years ago, and it's the reason I've rejoined the group in the larger tent. Totally worth listening to the snoring to not experience this again. So generally, our days go on as follows. Hunt in the morning, come back for lunch, go back out in the afternoon, hunt, then at night eat dinner and get supper, wasted. We are pretty late doing this, and when people get too drunk or tired, they peel off from the group and go to sleep. On this night, probably about 1 a.m., there's a few of us led by the fire, and we finally decide to call it the quits for the night. I'm a notorious light sleeper, and it's difficult for me to even fall asleep. As I laid there, trying my best to drift off and ignore the unexplainable noises you hear in the woods late at night, I heard one that simply cannot be ignored, and my heart begins to race. Off in the distance, into the woods, there's a crunching noise that's growing louder and louder. It sounds just like footsteps, a crunch, crunch, crunch sound as it stepped on the fall leaves and twigs. Now, I'm not inexperienced when it comes to noises in the woods. I've done enough hunting and camping to know that the sounds of the small critters running around, or leaves and sticks falling. This was clearly the noise of footsteps walking through the woods. And on this night, there was no wind, just this crunching noise that sounded like it was coming right towards me. It got much louder and clearer until it sounded like it was right outside my tent. It just stopped, and I could hear nothing else. At this point, I was panicking, and I had a few options. I could scream for help and risk the risk of it being nothing and looking like a huge weenie once everyone wakes up. I could lay there and try to ignore it and sleep, or go out there to see for myself. I choose option 3. I quickly jumped out of my bag and scrambled to get out of the tent, ready to take whatever might be waiting for me. But by the time I was there, or I got out, there was nothing. I stood outside my tent with my flashlight, looking around in the dark forest, trying to spot anything that could have been the cause of the noise, but couldn't find a thing. Unhappily, I was forced to go back in and try to fall asleep, not knowing what was out there. Now, the really creepy part was the next morning. My dad asked the body, Jim, what he was doing by the fire late last night by himself. Jim said that he was never out there and was in his tent the whole night. My dad explained that he got up in the middle of the night to take a piss. Lots of drinking will do that to you. And Jim was just sitting by the fire all alone. When he asked him what he was doing, he just continued to stare into the fire and said nothing. My dad didn't think too much of it. He just went back to bed. That's when I told them what happened to me. But there wasn't really anything we could do to explain any of it, so we brushed it off. This is exactly how the events happened, with no exaggeration. Neither my dad nor Jim had any reason to make any of it up, and I absolutely believe them. Obviously, golden and wendigos come to mind, especially because of the proximity to the Indian land. But I'm not a superstitious person. I can't be, otherwise I would never go into these woods again. We still camp in that very same spot every year, but like I said, it's with everyone else in the big tent. We've had a few other occurrences that were weird, but we definitely think those involved actual people, more than likely Native Americans.